Hi guys, happy Monday. January 5th, 2026 here. Okay, good afternoon. So this is nobody's covering it. Nobody's talking about it, and I think we're first to talk about this. So we want to talk about our buddy Jay Clayton. Jay Clayton, let's see who Jay Clayton is. Our buddy Jay Clayton is in this indictment for Maduro. Okay, everybody's talked about this indictment. It's missing a lot of things. Where's the fentanyl? Where's this? Where's that? All those things are legitimate. We're not going to go through them. Okay, that will come out later on. Okay, this indictment doesn't matter, but for us, this is what matters. Jay Clayton. He's the former SEC chairman under Taco, 2017 to 2021. He is really a hack, okay? He's a smart hack because he graduated from Pennsylvania and he's also a lawyer. So let's just get to this dude. This is the dude, okay? This is the dude. He's an attorney. He's only an attorney later on. So the reason why this is important is because he went from SEC chairman under Taco to basically U.S. attorney under Southern District of New York, and he's in this indictment, nobody else. So this is basically a nepo baby, okay? He is a nepo baby because his father, okay, this is his father, God bless him, Walt, okay, and by the way, it's Jay Clayton III. Okay, so this is Junior, his father, and God bless him. He just recently passed away in 2024, and he worked for Hershey, and he was also, as I said before, the assistant dean of admissions at the University of Pennsylvania. So he had the opportunity to work for Hershey. His father, and Jay Clayton also did that. And so nepo baby. And then also he went from Lafayette and transferred to University UPenn, and Bachelor's of Engineering in 1988. Okay, so there you go. Because his father was assistant dean of admissions at Penn. Okay, nepo baby. Okay. And then he also, later on, after he went to Cambridge, he came back and then he went to UPenn Law School, okay? Again, why was he accepted there? I mean, I'm sure he's smart, but why was he accepted? Nepo baby. Okay, let's leave that aside. That's a separate issue. It's an important issue. Now, let's focus on this interview today. It's really long, so I'm only going to go through the interview and what was said. So this is part one. Part two is going to be in another video because I can't fit it. Just juicy stuff, okay? So let's just focus on this interview because you know what's going to happen on CNBC. Truth is going to be told, and listen to him specifically on this. So the video is called Venezuelan President Maduro Indicted. SDNY U.S. Attorney Jay Clayton on what's next. So let's hear it. And this is long, guys, so it's 14 minutes.
Maduro facing federal drug trafficking and weapon charges in a case now being handled by the Southern District of New York in Manhattan. Joining us right now, U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York, Jay Clayton. He is a former SEC chair in the Trump administration. We're thrilled to have you on this morning to try to understand what comes next. Obviously, you're going to be down in Brooklyn, I imagine, or I don't know if Brooklyn, but in the downtown later today. When did you learn this was all happening?
Well, let me say, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Congratulations on the spin today.
Oh, thank you.
Amazing that you've gotten it done this quickly, and good luck with it.
You had a lot to do with it.
Yeah. Hey,
We're here.
You're here. You're doing it.
How long were you working on this?
How long? Well, just to clear the air out, I was scheduled to be on.
Yes.
And I'm happy to be on, and I'm happy to talk about this.
So let's talk about it.
You.
You don't look that tired. So were you working all weekend?
Yeah, I was working all weekend, but my people are working even harder than I am.
And when did you learn this was all going down?
Let's
like I assume at some point somebody in Washington calls you and says this is happening, and it's you are going to be the one who's going to prosecute this case.
Let's separate the operation from the legal.
Okay.
This case has been in the Southern District since 2011. This case involving narco-terrorism, the importation of cocaine, with the facilitation of the FARC, the use of government resources, has been there for that long. Nicolas Maduro was charged in 2020 as part of that conspiracy in a superseding indictment. We had another superseding indictment that was unsealed in connection with this operation, furthering those charges. What is fascinating here is that if you look at and I would encourage the public to look at these publicly available documents as to what's going on. What's fascinating here is that there are already two people who, as part of this conspiracy, the former head of the equivalent of the CIA, the former head of intelligence, and a former high-ranking military leader who have been convicted, pled guilty to these types of charges. Now, the other thing that I want to say, and I'm proud to say it, I'm very proud to say this as an American, is that these are allegations. Every person charged in the United States is entitled to the presumption of innocence and has their day in court. And that's exactly how we should be treating this.
Okay, so just take us through the weekend, though. So the president is down in Mar-a-Lago watching all of this. The helicopters are obviously down in Venezuela, literally extracting him. You learn about this when, how? Walk us through what happened in terms of how you, I mean, did you know this was happening before it happened?
We knew that he was indicted, and if you were reading the news, you knew that this was a focus of the administration. And it's not just a focus of the administration on Nicolas Maduro. If you ask, and we can bring this back to New York, and then I'll go back to it in a second. If you ask every New Yorker, what are the biggest threats that you see to New York and your safety? It's gun-toting criminals and transnational drug trafficking into the United States. And those have been two focuses for a while. When I got to the office at the Southern District, put aside white-collar crime, something we talk about a lot in this program, there were three things that I focused on. One, this type of drug trafficking into the United States. We put additional resources on these types of matters. Second thing, you've heard me talk about it, and gun crime is way down in the city. I'd like to think that we have a small part to do with it. Gun-toting criminals. The other is sex trafficking, particularly minor sex trafficking. So we had ramped up our efforts in connection with this prosecution.
Let me ask you about this then, because we're not going to get. Sounds like we're not going to get the full blow-by-blow over the weekend from you.
Well, operations are not my thing, right? Okay. Operations are a military thing.
The biggest question, I think, that in the country to some degree is the constitutionality of us effectively going into another sovereign country and extracting the leader of that country. I imagine this is going to be the argument that his lawyers are going to make before you even get into the merits of the case itself.
Oh, and Andrew, thank you for saying that, because for those reasons, let's stick to facts on the ground as we know them. People have been making the analogy to Noriega. There are other precedents to look at, including, and I would encourage people to look at this, Libya, Benghazi, and the arrest of a number of people who were engaged in that. And then one that's close to my heart that was most recent, Pan Am 103. After years and years, they finally brought to justice through Libya. There's examples in Syria and combatants during those wars being back to the United States. So there is precedent, but I'll say from the perspective of where I sit, my people and I are completely comfortable with this prosecution.
Yeah, I think his lawyers have already suggested that as a leader of another country, he is immune from prosecution. Is our argument that he's not officially elected?
Secretary Rubio and that press conference from Mar-a-Lago was pretty impressive. This is a president that will stand there and answer any question. The most accessible president in my lifetime. Secretary Rubio is somebody who I think doesn't waste a word. And he was very clear about this, not only in that press conference, but over the weekend. He said, we never recognized, the Biden administration never recognized, the EU never recognized, and 60 countries, and this is all in the indictment, did not recognize Maduro as the duly elected leader of Venezuela.
Do you know who's going to be representing him?
I do not.
You do not. So have you had any communication with whoever would be representing his team?
I have not.
Okay.
I have not. My team may have.
There's a separate question, and maybe it's the sort of, again, a broader question, which is if we, meaning the U.S., prepared to arrest somebody like Maduro in their home country, why aren't we? I mean, the critics of this, of the way this has been approached, beyond the questions about congressional authority and other things, would say, well, we should be going into Mexico. We should be going into all sorts of countries. They look at this and they say, well, what about the pardon of the ex-president of Honduras, who did something that seemingly seems like exactly the same thing? How do you react to that?
My answer is where I started, which is the biggest threats to the United States are state-sponsored crimes against Americans. And narco trafficking into the United States, killing hundreds of thousands of people every year. And one thing that I heard, which, I have to say, I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm hearing this. Most of this is cocaine, not fentanyl.
Right, you've heard that.
Okay, how many deaths are there because somebody thought they were taking cocaine and there was actually laced with fentanyl? And, is cocaine somehow fine? Cocaine has been a scourge in this country, my entire adult life. It's an absolutely terrible drug.
I guess the question is, where's the line then in terms of going into another country? And this is the question. So if you're going to do Venezuela, would you do Mexico? Is this a pretext?
The
other question is this here we are looking at the stock price of Chevron and other companies. Obviously, Chevron is really the only major American company that has a big operation there. People look even what the president has said. There's an argument to be made that this is a pretext, right, effectively, for our ability to control valuable oil and minerals and other things.
Let me take a step back and say this, that these types of questions, they're interesting law school questions. I think you have to deal with each of these things idiosyncratically, right? Did anybody, we had a killer capture against bin Laden, and indicted for the bombings in the embassies in Africa.
Right.
And that I don't think any American felt bad about that.
That many Americans feel this. Once again, right down partisan lines.
But
it is.
In court today and in court over the next year or two,
we'll see how it plays
I
out.
imagine his lawyers are going to argue it's a pretext for some kind of control of a country.
And Andrew,
then, by the way, there's a big question about what happens next there.
This is the greatest country in the world because we get to have those arguments. I'm totally comfortable with this.
What do you make, by the way, to the extent that you could answer to the extent there's critics out there that look at actually the
Out there? Okay.
It's okay.
Have you read the newspapers?
No, I know.
I know.
There's a big question
Do you
about.
see any of the other side of it that you don't have any of those questions pertinent about how excited people are there that they're crying that their entire family was murdered by this guy and now they're free. There's millions of people in the street.
There's going to be
should I ask those questions?
There's going to be no argument made in court about that issue. And here's the guy who's going to be prosecuting this guy, right?
We respect the rule of law. We respect process. We absolutely respect people's rights. But people think I'm crazy, but I rode the subway up here today. You know what I was thinking? I was thinking, you know what? If people feel safe on this subway, if they think there's nobody on this platform that's going to use a gun in a crime, if they think that there aren't drug traffickers here, all the work that my office has been doing on the parks, on the housing projects, to get gun-toting criminals, to get people who trafficking drugs to kids off the streets, that's what the American people want.
What does that say? But honestly, what would it say about Mexico, for example? That's where most of the fentanyl comes from.
What I'm going to say is it's idiosyncratic. What do we know about Mexico? Without stating anything specific or anything, what do we know about Mexico? We know that significant portions of that country are controlled by drug traffickers. That's what we know.
Okay, and therefore...
And those drug traffickers are bringing deadly fentanyl into the United States. From my office's perspective, we're going to build cases against people like that, hopefully get enough information, enough to indict them.
Right.
and we want them brought to justice.
In places where there is no discourse, China, Russia, other places, they can control the entire hemisphere and not one person is going to say a thing about it. We are the leading country of the Western Hemisphere. You can hark back to the Monroe Doctrine, wherever you want to go. It's important that we are able to flex our muscles to some extent here if we're wearing the white hat and if we're doing what I think is if it's not going to work for the American people, they can elect different people in this year in November, impeach Trump and elect enough senators, get rid of, and we won't even have to worry about it.
Let me go back to something that I've said, and the American people should understand. Drug trafficking, fentanyl, cocaine, other similarly deadly drugs is a global, sophisticated business where the players have the resources and I would say the infrastructure equivalent to our best run companies. We need to focus our resources on bankrupting those cartels.
Let me just ask you a different question. Does it help or hurt your case in court for the President of the United States to talk about either taking over the country and or the resources which and the leverage that us either having control or something else has in regard to your case?
Let me turn that around and say, can you imagine a situation where you have this type of circumstance? Let's just put that, where the President of the United States does not talk about the ramifications and the importance of what's going on in the world as a result. I think that and that's not my role, but that is the role of the President of the United States, the Secretary of State, to talk about not just a legal action, but what that legal action means for the American people. And I think that's not where I'm supposed to work.
Right.
It's not where I'm going to work. But incredible to come out and be so transparent, answer any question.
Are you convinced the Constitution gives the executive branch and President Trump the authority to act in this fashion?
I am completely comfortable. I'm completely comfortable with our prosecution.
This is all just, what is this? You're right. It's like law school.
I'm completely comfortable with what we're doing. And I think I'm proud to be able to do this in America.
And we're not plundering the oil business. We're not doing it. That's another left-wing.
People who are charged with crimes in America, and you'll notice I'm being very careful. Only the facts in the indictment am I talking about? But people who are charged with crimes in America, they have the presumption of innocence.
Why did you say it's not exactly like Noriega? He exhausted the court system here, and everything was upheld.
Joe, there's countless examples.
Okay, and here we go.
For more on what Maduro's capture could mean.
The key actors, why framing matters. Nicolas Maduro, indicted in absentia, never in U.S. custody, still de facto head of state. Jay Clayton, former SEC chair under Trump, now SDNY U.S. attorney, political appointee with loyalty baggage. Donald Trump repeatedly frames prosecutions as instruments of state power, not neutral justice. This context is essential because credibility plus independence is the whole case. 1. The first red flag. This case has been in SDNY since 2011. This case has been in the Southern District since 2011. Maduro was charged in 2020. Why this matters? This isn't new evidence. This isn't a new emergency. This isn't a reactive prosecution. Translation. We sat on this for a decade. Now we're activating it because the politics changed. A real prosecutor explains why now. Clayton never does. That omission will be Exhibit A in any suppression/dismissal motion. 2. The superseding indictment tell procedural smoke. Clayton repeatedly emphasizes. Superseding indictment. Furthering those charges. Additional resources. What he does not say. No new overt acts. No new jurisdictional hook. No new custody nexus. This is classic indictment laundering. Recycle old allegations, repackage, re-announce political moment. That's not illegal, but it's weak. 3. The immunity dodge. This is huge. We never recognized Maduro as the duly elected leader. Why this is legally fragile. Head of state immunity does not depend solely on U.S. recognition. Courts look at de facto control, effective governance, international practice, executive consistency. Clayton outsources the legal argument to Marco Rubio's press conference. That's not how immunity analysis works in court. A judge will ask, is the executive branch using recognition doctrine selectively to pierce immunity? That's dangerous territory. 4. The Noriega/Bin Laden comparisons, very bad law. Clayton cites Noriega, Bin Laden, Pan AM 103, Benghazi, Syria. Why this is prosecutorial malpractice. Those cases involved armed conflict, combatants, UN resolutions, extradition or capture in war zones, terrorist designations with active hostilities. Maduro is not equal to Noriega legally. Maduro is not equal to Bin Laden factually. Clayton is selling moral equivalence to mask legal mismatch. That will not survive a motion to dismiss. 5. The Chevron/oil question and his non-answer. CNBC directly asks, is this a pretext for oil and minerals? Clayton responds, interesting law school questions. Idiosyncratic. White hat. Bin Laden again. That's not a denial. That's deflection. A neutral prosecutor says, resource considerations played no role. He never says that, not once. That silence is intentional. 6. The we respect due process performance. Clayton overperforms. Presumption of innocence. Rule of law. Subway anecdote. Public safety rhetoric. Why this is signaling. When prosecutors are confident, they talk evidence. When they are exposed, they talk values. This entire interview is values theater. 7. The Mexico hypothetical, the inconsistency trap. CNBC asks the most dangerous question. If Venezuela, why not Mexico? Clayton answers, idiosyncratic. Case by case. We'll build cases. That answer admits selectivity. Selective enforcement plus political context equals equal protection problem. 8. The biggest hill of all. You caught this. If it doesn't work for the American people, they can impeach Trump. That line does not belong in a prosecutorial interview. That is political messaging, electoral framing, executive loyalty signaling. It confirms your read. He is carrying water. Bottom line, what actually matters legally. Strongest vulnerabilities. Head of state immunity. Jurisdiction/custody. Selective enforcement. Pretext oil plus geopolitics. Timing after decade-long dormancy. Strongest defense arguments. Narcoterrorism statute reach. Prior guilty pleas by co-conspirators. Political non-recognition theory, but weak. Plain English translation. This interview is not about winning in court. It is about normalizing an extraordinary act, framing power as legality, giving Trump constitutional cover, preempting public discomfort. A jury never hears this interview. A judge will smell it immediately.
Okay, this is part 1, guys.